Hey guys, it's Mike here, and in this video, I want to address one of the most important questions ever asked in the history of the franchise, particularly about Vegeta, one of the most important characters who has endured ever since his introduction in Dragon Ball Z all the way back in the 80s in the manga and in the anime. And that has to do with perhaps his most popular ability and most popular technique, with the question being, how exactly does Vegeta's technique work in Dragon Ball Z and the greater Dragon Ball franchise? This is something that's basically become a meme in recent years, which I give all the credit to Lonely's Archives for inspiring me to make this joke in my videos, and also not just that, for this video in general. I didn't realize how impactful Vegeta's technique really was until I watched that video in that series that he did, and, gotta give him all the credit for that, but especially for Vegeta and the technique that he likes to use. So let's get into my discussion and explanation of, Vegeta's technique and how exactly it works by going through the different examples in the manga and explaining just its situations where he used it. So first off, the first example of him using Vegeta's technique would have to come down to the Saiyan saga, where a weakened Vegeta was fighting against Gohan, the son of Goku, Son Goku, Son Goku, Son Gohan, Son Gohan's grandson, Son Goku, who's the father of Son Gohan. What is this, dark? But anyway, either way, the fact is that Vegeta used his technique against Gohan here with a flurry of super fast blasts that went right at Son Goku's son Gohan and exploded in his face and made him fly back and try and get out of the way, while Krillin was utilizing the ability of the Spirit Bomb to try and take him out. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves now with that other shot. That's a little spoiler of what's to come in the video, right? Now, what is he doing here? He's firing a bunch of little attacks. Now, obviously, these are not individually as powerful as, let's say, if he combined all of them together. Instead, it's a flurry of attacks that Gohan gets hit with the accumulation of and then has to jump and dodge back. Of course, Vegeta, even now, is stronger than Gohan would be. So instead of spending time charging up a blast, he fires a bunch of them like this. And now, let's talk about the next example here. And you'll see a recurring theme. Vegeta uses Vegeta's technique against Zarbon down here. Now, what exactly is happening? Well, Zarbon is in the water. He got knocked down there by Vegeta after he's weakening him. This is Vegeta who got a Zenkai boost, and he doesn't immediately proceed to just fight Zarbon and stomp him like he did with Kiwi as it were, but instead he uses certain tactics against him. He uses Vegeta's technique against him. And this is interesting because Vegeta, when he's using these flurry of little blasts, he isn't only able to use them against one target. He's able to quickly adjust them to hitting somebody else. Krillin tries to take the opportunity to flee with Bulma with the Dragon Ball so that Vegeta won't be able to get it. Vegeta's Dragon Ball in this case. And so what happens? Well, he switches his positioning and goes to fire in front of them, not to kill them. After all, that's his future baby mama, but also in order to, just prevent them from leaving. But during this, of course, Zarbon, he wasn't killed by Vegeta's technique. Nobody ever is. And so he decided to fly up right through the intermission of them, let's say, and proceed to try and, get back in the battle, which inevitably he obviously lost. Now, with that being said, there isn't a situation where perhaps you could say Vegeta was using Vegeta's technique, which is against Recoome, whose name rhymes with doom and means moo in Japanese. It's kind of like the different cultural names for it. So he knocks back Recoome, and he uses this ability, this technique from Vegeta, which isn't Vegeta's technique TM. And that is the Final Crash, an awesome looking ability, which is basically a precursor to the Final Flash. He charges up a significant amount of rapid power energy and unleashes it upon the bulky member of the Ginyu Force. That's probably Harold's favorite. and fires a full power attack, boom, shooting this gigantic explosion up into the atmosphere of Namek and destroying yet another section, the ozone, which was, gone by the end of this story, along with the entire planet. And so what happens is that after that, you could argue maybe he did use Vegeta's technique right here, because he fired this attack which exploded, and then we see him doing this. Now, some might be able to say, well, this is actually Vegeta's technique, but instead, there is a strong argument that it was either a continuation of the same move, or perhaps just a follow-up blast with what other energy was left. This was more of an example of Vegeta dumping all of his strength in a one attack to take out a much stronger opponent. However, it follows suit in the very same way that Vegeta's technique typically does, which is that, well, it didn't work. He's shocked. I can't believe it didn't work, even though my techniques never work. Aside from against like Ender 19, very few other characters. But either way, what happens? Well, Raccoon, he decided to do the Dance of Doom because he was pretty much fine. Now, let's get into the other example I was going to bring up too of Vegeta's technique, which is right here with Majin Buu, which doesn't rhyme with Raccoon, but, here's another example of it completely failing. You see, Vegeta is able to deal damage to Kid Buu, Pure Buu, Aku Buu here, but the thing is that, unfortunately, as we see it, it's meaningless. You see, Buu doesn't really need to, try to endure any attacks. His stamina seems like it's infinite. His regeneration is borderline infinite, up to a certain point of damage that could be done to him with, let's say, a single blast. But that's kind of the weakness of Vegeta's technique, which is, as you can see, he's firing a bunch of these blasts. Buu is turned into little fractals of Buu. He's turned into these little sections. And then he disappears, and reappears behind Vegeta and knocks him down. Actually, that reminds me of another technique I skipped by accident, even though, I don't know why I would, because it's in the thumbnail, which is the other time Vegeta used Vegeta's technique against an enemy. He got really mad against Cell, for instance, after Cell killed his son Trunks before his very eyes after returning his super perfect Cell. Vegeta rushed toward him, becoming a Super Saiyan, angry at the death of his son, who he just realized he actually loved and respected. Great moment. Not the smartest moments, we go to find out. And what happens, he hits a much more powerful Cell with one blast, making him brace, and then a cloud of smoke appears, and then he begins to hit him over and over and over with this flurry of blasts, this rapid attack, exhausting his energy, but again, it does nothing. Cell flies up through the cloud of smoke, and then smacks Vegeta down to the ground at his very feet. And Gohan's, who jumps in the way to try and save him from the next blast and gets hurt. Single blast, dealing way more damage. A single slap, dealing way more damage than, many blasts. And so that's kind of Vegeta's technique in a nutshell. What does he do? He fires a bunch of little blasts at his enemy. But why? Why would he even do this? Well, there's a number of reasons. Number one, instead of taking the excess time to charge up an attack, he does seem like he charges a little bit here against Gohan. Instead, he's able to fire a continuous attack, albeit sacrificing the output of a large blast that he can combine all of the energy into, and then kind of pepper his opponent with them. You see, in Dragon Ball, characters have their force field, their defense of ki that they put up as a sort of barrier around their body, around their area, in order to fend off blasts. Typically, every single time they repel a blast, they are giving up their stamina, a little bit of it each time, a little bit of energy, which is sacrificed to block an attack. Even if a character is way less powerful than the other, if they use a million little blasts and they can keep it up, well, eventually that energy is going to keep getting depleted because one of them might do nothing. But 1,000 of them, well, maybe that's going to do a little bit more. The thing is, though, that when Vegeta does this, he is also exhausting his own stamina. He might not have the time to charge up a gigantic blast. With Raccoon, he caught him off guard with this attack and fired the final crash, which is basically, I guess, if he had fired a bunch of little Vegeta's technique blasts at him. But either way, the result is the same. It did nothing to him. Now, you could say that too with regard to somebody else like Cell. Cell was so much more powerful than Vegeta, same thing with Buu, but a very different situation. Cell braced himself because he has a limited amount of stamina and, well, not just that, but also uses up stamina and energy, not just to block, not just to dodge in a fight, but also to regenerate, more like Piccolo. Whereas with Buu, as I had shown just before, it has, again, the similar sort of drawback. Well, not the same drawback, rather, where he doesn't have to worry about it. He can get hit by every single one of the blasts from Vegeta's technique, but he can just keep coming back and not really having to worry too much about it. So with regard to Cell, he just braced and endured all these low blasts because they were nothing to him. Vegeta exhausted himself before he was able to, well, hurt Cell at all, which would have taken a very long time because Cell was so much more powerful than Vegeta at that point in time. But he still needed to brace compared to, well, just, infinitely enduring them like Buu could. The same thing in the case of Zarbon. So the thing is with Zarbon, he wasn't that much below Vegeta at this point in time after the Zenkai boost. That's why Vegeta did certain tactics to exhaust his power and stuff. And so in this case, it was more of just trying to wear Zarbon down with his stamina and defenses, like when he threw the sand, pocket sand, sha-sha-sha, that's Dale's technique from, King of the Hill, into his eyes, and then hitting him in the back with that charged attack, punch, blast, whatever it was you want to call it. Another one of Vegeta's techniques. I don't think he ever uses again. And then wearing him down until eventually he kills him. So the thing is that this technique is overall just very ineffective when we see it used. Vegeta uses it when he's tired against Gohan. He knocks him back with a bunch of little blasts and he hurts him. He sends him into a rock and stuff, but he doesn't really kill him with this. It's more of like a way of getting him back, of dealing little damage to him and trying to weaken him down, but it doesn't kill Gohan as much as like if he'd fired a large blast at him, perhaps because they were in the middle of a little fight at the time and Gohan wouldn't give him the time to charge. Same thing when he is doing this to Buu. Well, he knows that even if he fires a full power attack at Buu, it's not going to work. So Vegeta is doing this in this case to stall him so that Goku can charge up energy. He doesn't know Goku's not going to be able to actually keep it going for a little bit. But as we could see, Goku confirms it here. In the case of Cell, Vegeta, well, he's already hit him with the final flash before, and this is a much more powerful Cell than even the, full power of Perfect Cell that he had just seen, who he was no match for. So in this case, he's just raging out. He does not have really much thought processes in this case. He's just going to exhaust himself, holding Cell down and keeping him down with a flurry of blasts rather than charging up for 5 minutes and firing one at him. Another way, I guess you could say, it pins your opponent down when you use Vegeta's technique against them. Or in this case, if he did in fact use that at the very end against Recoome, he had already hit him with a big attack, so he's like, okay, maybe he's down, or maybe he's weakened enough to where I can exhaust and dump the rest of my energy in hitting him again and finishing the job. But as is usually the case, Vegeta's technique is ultimately useless. It never works. It didn't work when even Buu used it against Vegeta. There is one time where Goku uses it against Cell, but then Cell just puts up Android 17's barrier and just makes it irrelevant. He's able to stop Goku from defeating him. So you could argue that, again, it's something to hold your opponent down, to keep them at bay, and also defeat them through death by 1,000 cuts rather than by a single slice. So that is how Vegeta's technique works in Dragon Ball Z. Is in this particular case, Vegeta's technique any good? Not really, no. It seems like it kind of just sucks. It seems like it is one of the worst techniques he has because of the fact that, well, in theory, on paper, maybe it would work. I mean, if he used it against a much weaker opponent, it would seem to. But when he uses it against anyone, even in the neighborhood of his power level, or, when he uses it in the case of somebody who's much stronger, it typically doesn't really benefit in any way. And it seems more along the lines of, well, I have very little options left. Here's a bunch of little blasts, and I'll be able to do something. But inevitably, he just totally fails because, well, that's Vegeta's greatest technique, failure. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and stick around, because there is a lot more Vegeta's Technique to come, well, in the future. Assuming you're not tired of it after this video. I wouldn't be surprised if you are.
Yeah, and you better subscribe.